I never meant for any of this to happen. If someone told me a year ago that the most intense, confusing, magnetic connection of my life would be with a woman 11 years older than me, a woman who seemed miles out of my league in every possible way, I would have laughed it off. I used to think relationships were supposed to follow some formula. Meet someone your age, date around, settle when it feels right. Nothing prepared me for her. Nothing prepared me for how she'd walk into my life without warning and flip everything I thought I understood about myself. I met her because of my brother, technically. He was hosting this small get-together at his apartment. One of those evenings where you expect to sit on a couch, drink cheap beer, and listen to the same people retell the same stories. I'd almost skipped it, honestly. I'd had a brutal week at work, and all I wanted was sleep. But he insisted I show up, said I needed to act like a human for once. So I went. She arrived late. I remember the exact moment the door opened. The room wasn't loud, but it felt like it went quiet anyway. She stepped inside wearing this dark green sweater, simple jeans, her hair loosely pulled back like she hadn't thought much about it. But the confidence in the way she moved, calm, collected, almost indifferent, made everyone else fade into the background. Her name was Ava. My brother introduced her as his co-worker, someone from another department who helped him with a client crisis. She basically saved my career this month, he joked. She just rolled her eyes and said, "He's being dramatic." I swear she barely looked at me at first. Not in a rude way. More like she was scanning the room, taking everyone in, thinking 1,000 things at once. But the moment our eyes finally met, something subtle shifted. Not a spark, not fireworks. More like a recognition. Like she was reading something on my face and immediately understood more about me than I was comfortable with. We didn't talk for almost an hour. I kept finding myself glancing in her direction without meaning to, and every time I did, she was already talking to someone else. Effortless, composed, funny without trying. When she laughed, it wasn't loud. It was warm, like she didn't give her laughter to people unless they earned it. It wasn't until most people left that she finally sat next to me. Everyone else was scattered, my brother cleaning up, a couple people playing some card game in the corner. She set her drink down, leaned back against the couch, and said, "You're quieter than the rest." I remember freezing for half a second. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or an observation. "I'm usually like that," I said. "Just taking things in." She gave a small smile. "Good. More people should." That should have been the end of it. Small talk. Nothing special. But then she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "So what are you trying to figure out tonight?" I didn't know how to answer. No one had ever talked to me like that. Like my thoughts were something worth exploring, not just noise. I told her about work, about how I felt stuck, like I was waiting for something to start, but didn't even know what. I didn't mean to open up that quickly, but she had this way of listening without interrupting, like she made space for thoughts you didn't realize you were carrying. She laughed softly when I apologized for rambling. "Don't apologize. You're honest. It's rare." For the first time in months, I felt seen. Not admired, not judged, just understood. And the dangerous thing is, that's all it took. We ended up talking until almost 2 a.m. Nothing flirty, nothing intense, just two people who somehow aligned in a way that didn't make sense yet. She told me she was 34, recently relocated for work, not interested in messy dating, as she put it. When I mentioned I was 23, she nodded as if she already assumed it. "You've got an old soul," she said. "It almost makes up for the age gap." Almost. I should have known then I was in trouble. She left that night with a simple, "Nice talking to you," but my mind didn't let it go. I replayed every word, every look, every subtle shift in her expression. I didn't think I'd see her again. I definitely didn't think she'd become the one person I couldn't get out of my head. I had no idea how much she would change my life. I didn't hear from her for almost 2 weeks after that night, which would have been fine, normal, even, if I hadn't kept replaying that conversation over and over like some obsessed idiot. I tried to shake it off. People meet interesting strangers all the time. They talk, they connect, they move on. That's how adulthood works, right? You don't get stuck thinking about someone you barely know, especially someone 11 years older, someone who looks like she's walked through fire and come out the other side without a scratch. But every time my phone buzzed, I caught myself hoping it was her. And every time it wasn't, there was this stupid, sinking disappointment I kept trying to ignore. It wasn't until my brother texted me saying, "Ava is coming by the office tomorrow. You left your headphones here last time. I'll give them to her so she can give them to you. She said she lives closer to you anyway. My stomach dropped, which made zero sense, because this wasn't a date. This wasn't anything. But suddenly I cared way too much about how she'd see me again. I cleaned my apartment. I shaved. I picked out a shirt I normally reserved for when I wanted to look like I had my life together. I hated that it mattered. She texted me at noon the next day. Ava, hey, I'm near your place. Can I drop these off? I'm double parked so I can't stay long. Me? Yeah, sure. I'll be outside. I probably looked ridiculous rushing out of my building as fast as I did. She was leaning against her car, sunglasses on, hair loose this time, looking like she stepped straight out of a lifestyle magazine without trying. She held my headphones in one hand and a coffee in the other. Thought you might want these back before they disappear into your brother's chaos, she said. Thanks, I managed, praying I didn't look as nervous as I felt. She tilted her head slightly, studying me with that sharp, unreadable gaze of hers. You okay? You seem not your usual quiet. Just tired, I lied. She smiled like she didn't believe me, but wasn't going to push. Join the club. There was a moment, just one, where neither of us said anything. The street noise faded, the winter air between us sharper than it should have been. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and I swear my pulse jumped. Then she broke the silence. Look, she said, I owe you a real conversation. I feel like I talked your ear off last time. You didn't, I said a little too quickly. She laughed. Well, I like talking to you. And I could actually use a break today. Are you busy? I wasn't. Not at all. But I didn't want to seem desperate. I've got time, I said, trying to sound casual. Good, she replied, opening her car door. Get in. I need caffeine. You can keep me company. Before I knew it, we were driving across town to this quiet, tucked-away coffee shop she liked. The place was small, with brick walls and soft jazz playing. Not the kind of place I ever went to on my own. She ordered something complicated. I ordered whatever she was having, mostly because I was too focused on her voice to process the menu. We found a corner table, and she took off her sunglasses. That's when I really noticed, that she looked tired. Not physically, but in a deeper way. Like she was carrying something heavy she didn't plan on talking about. But she didn't talk about herself at first. She asked about my work, my goals, my screwed-up sense of direction. She had this habit of interrupting me only to ask a question that made me think deeper than I intended to. It wasn't flirtation. Not yet. It was curiosity. Genuine, intense curiosity. You're harder to read than most people your age, she said at one point. Is that a good thing? I asked. It's interesting, she answered. And dangerous. People who hold that much inside either change the world or blow up their own lives. I didn't know what to say to that. Then, as if realizing she'd revealed too much, she took a slow sip of her drink and looked out the window. Her jaw tightened, just slightly. Ava, I said quietly. Are you okay? She didn't answer for a long moment. Then she looked back at me with a soft, almost sad smile. I'm fine, she said. Just not used to being around people who notice things. The space between us shifted again, heavier this time, warmer, charged with something neither of us named. I don't know how long we sat there. Long enough for the sunlight to move. Long enough for me to realize that whatever this was, it wasn't simple. And it wasn't going away. After that coffee shop afternoon, I tried to convince myself that it didn't mean anything. People grab coffee all the time. People talk. People bond for a couple of hours and then go back to their separate lives. But something had changed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. More like a shift beneath the surface, quiet but undeniable. A week passed before I saw her again. She texted me one evening, short, direct, and very her. Ava, you free tomorrow? I need help with something. And before you ask, yes, I'm using you. Me. Using me how? Ava, furniture assembly. I'm admitting defeat. I showed up at her apartment the next afternoon. It was the first time I'd ever seen where she lived. And it made sense, every part of it. Minimalist, calm, warm tones, plants everywhere, books stacked neatly along the wall. No clutter, no chaos. Everything deliberate. She opened the door with her hair up in a messy bun and an oversized t-shirt that definitely wasn't meant to be seen by guests, especially not me. She looked softer, more human than the polished version I'd met at my brother's place. And for a moment, I forgot how to speak. Hi, she said. Come in before I change my mind and burn the furniture instead. Her living room looked like a crime scene. Wooden pieces spread everywhere. Instruction manuals in Swedish or some alien language. A screwdriver abandoned in defeat. You weren't kidding, I said. She sighed dramatically. I'm a fully functioning adult woman with a career and responsibilities. But this thing wants me dead. I laughed, which made her smile. A real one, full and unguarded. We spent the next hour on the floor, sorting screws and panels. She kept accusing me of pretending to read the instructions just so I could look capable. I kept accusing her of sabotaging the project out of pride. It was easy, effortless, dangerously natural. At one point she paused, sitting cross-legged across from me, and said, "You don't realize it, do you?" "Realize what?" "You're comfortable to be around." She looked confused with herself for even saying it. I don't get that often. People exhaust me. Does that include me? She shook her head slowly. No, that's the problem. There it was. The first hint that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't imagining this connection. But she changed the subject immediately, diving back into the half-built bookshelf like she hadn't just dropped a live grenade between us. When we finally finished, she stood up, stretched, and leaned her back against the wall. "I owe you dinner," she said. "You don't," I answered. "Don't argue with me," she said, pointing at me with a glare that wasn't really a glare. "I'm stubborn. You'll lose." She ordered food from a Thai place nearby while I cleaned up the tools. We ate on the floor since the table was covered in books she hadn't organized yet. She asked me about the worst job I ever had. I asked her the same. She told me stories about her 20s, messy, funny, reckless in ways that didn't match the composed woman in front of me. But then something shifted. It happened when I mentioned my relationship with my dad, how strained it had become after years of tension neither of us knew how to fix. I didn't expect her to react. I definitely didn't expect her eyes to flicker with something like recognition or pain. "Ava," I asked quietly, "did I say something wrong?" She inhaled sharply. "No, you didn't. I just..." She stopped, looked at her hands, then said something so soft I barely heard it. "My dad and I don't talk anymore." I didn't know what to say. She didn't volunteer more, and I didn't push. Not because I wasn't curious, but because I could feel, really feel, that whatever happened between her and her father wasn't something she threw into conversations casually. For a long moment, she just sat there, staring at the floor like she'd let too much slip. Then she whispered, "You notice things. Too much sometimes." "Is that bad?" "It's inconvenient," she said, "because it makes me want to tell you things I don't tell people." I felt my pulse in my throat. This wasn't flirting. This was something deeper, darker, more intimate. She got up abruptly, smoothing her shirt. "I should get some rest. Big day tomorrow." It was a dismissal, but not a cold one. More like she needed distance before she revealed anything else. I stood to leave, but she walked me to the door. When I stepped into the hall, she called my name. "Hey," she said quietly. "Thank you. For today?" Her voice cracked on the last word. Just barely, but I heard it. She closed the door before I could respond. I stood there for a minute, staring at the wood grain, knowing something had changed again. A crack had opened in her walls, and she hated that I noticed. I didn't hear from her for 3 days after the bookshelf afternoon. 3 days isn't long, but it felt longer than it should have. I kept overthinking every moment. The way her voice broke when she thanked me, the way she shut down as soon as she realized she'd let herself be vulnerable. I wasn't upset. I just wanted to understand her more than she wanted to be understood. On the 4th day, she texted me. "Ava, are you alive, or did the bookshelf collapse and take you with it?" Me, still standing. "Ava, good. I need a favor." Of course she did. And of course I said yes. She sent me an address. It wasn't her place. It was a co-working building across town. When I got there, she was waiting outside, leaning against a railing, phone in hand, hair falling over her face in a way that looked accidental but cinematic. "You came fast," she said. "You said you needed help." She raised an eyebrow. "You know, most people at least pretend to check their schedule first." "I'm not most people." Something flickered in her eyes, but she didn't comment. Inside, she led me to a conference room filled with boxes. "I'm moving departments," she said. "And apparently that means moving everything I own from here to storage before the vultures steal it. So I'm the muscle? You're the only person I trust not to break something," she said. "Or complain." "I complain." She gave a faint smile. "Not with me." We worked quietly for a while, lifting, sorting, packing up equipment she didn't need anymore. There was music playing faintly from her phone. Something soft, older, a little sad. At one point, she handed me a heavy box and our fingers brushed. A small thing. Accidental. But she froze. Just for a second. And when she pulled her hand back, it was too quick. Too controlled. We both pretended it didn't mean anything. When we finished carrying the last box down to her car, she leaned against the trunk and let out a long breath. I hate transitions, she said. They remind you how temporary everything is. You don't like change? I like control, she corrected softly. Change usually means losing it. I didn't know if she meant her job, her life, or something else entirely. We drove to the storage facility, and she let me do most of the lifting. Not because she couldn't. Ava wasn't fragile, but because she was somewhere in her head that I couldn't reach. Not yet. When we finished, she sat on the edge of the trunk and wiped her hands on her jeans. Thank you, she said. I know I keep asking for things. You're allowed to. No, she said quietly, looking down. I'm really not. I sat next to her. Close, but not touching. You can, I repeated. With me. She turned her head, studying me with that almost defensive expression she used whenever she felt something she didn't want to feel. You're young, she said. You don't know what you're saying. Age doesn't change honesty. It changes consequences, she replied. We stayed like that for a long moment. The air between us too warm, too charged, too close to something we weren't naming. Then she stood abruptly. We should go. I still need dinner. You want company? She hesitated, really hesitated, before saying, yeah, actually, yeah. We ended up at a small Mexican place near her place. She ordered a margarita. I stuck to water because I needed a clear head around her. We talked about stupid things at first, movies, bad office drama, the disaster that was her cooking skills. She claimed she could burn water, and honestly, I believed her. But as the night went on, things got quieter, heavier. She watched people pass by the window and said, do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you took a wrong turn years ago, and you're still trying to convince yourself it was the right one? I didn't answer at first. She wasn't really asking me. She was asking the universe. But I said, yeah, I feel like that a lot. She nodded slowly, absently spinning her straw. Then, without looking at me, she whispered, I like being around you. More than I should. My heart stopped. Literally stopped. Ava, don't, she said quickly, almost pleading. Don't say anything. I just needed to say it out loud. I didn't push. I didn't confess. I didn't reach for her hand, even though I wanted to. We walked back to her apartment after dinner. The whole time, neither of us touched. But the space between our hands felt electric. At her door, she paused. You're trouble, she said quietly. And I'm too old to be making bad decisions. You think I'm a bad decision? I think you could be, she whispered. If I let you. Then, because life is cruel and perfect at the same time, she leaned in, so close I could feel her breath on my neck, and said, good night. No kiss. No touch. Just the sharp ache of almost. She closed the door, and I stood there, pulse racing, knowing damn well we'd crossed a line. A line we pretended not to see. A line neither of us would stop approaching. The next week felt like walking around with a live wire pressed against my chest. Nothing happened. No dramatic confessions. No sudden kisses. No late-night phone calls drenched in emotion. But everything had shifted. She wasn't just Ava anymore. The confident, composed woman in her mid-30s who'd lived more life than I had. She wasn't just the person I kept accidentally noticing. She was someone I wanted, and someone I was terrified of wanting. We texted a little, short things, simple things, but every message felt like it carried a weight neither of us acknowledged. Then one Friday night, she asked if I wanted to come over. Not for help, not for errands, just to hang out. Her words, not mine. When I walked into her apartment, something felt different. Not visually. The furniture was the same, the lighting the same, the faint smell of jasmine the same. But the air felt warmer. Closer. She was sitting on the couch with a blanket draped around her legs, hair down, wearing a soft gray sweater that somehow made her look younger and older at the same time. You look tired, I said. She gave a half smile. It's been a long week. Come sit. I sat beside her, close enough to feel the heat from her shoulder, far enough that I wouldn't forget myself. We watched some documentary she picked out, but I couldn't tell you a single thing about it. I spent the whole time aware of her fingers tapping lightly against her mug, The way her knee occasionally brushed mine when she shifted, the soft exhale she made whenever she got lost in thought. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, read something, and her whole face changed. Not dramatically, just a tightening around her mouth, a certain stillness. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just work stuff." She set the phone down face down. We kept watching, but her mind wasn't there anymore. She kept zoning out, fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. "Ava," I said softly. "Talk to me." She swallowed hard. "You're going to think I'm being dramatic." "I won't." She hesitated, really hesitated, before quietly saying, "I got a message from someone I hoped I'd never hear from again." My chest tightened. "Someone dangerous?" "No," she said, laughing without humor. "Not dangerous. Just someone who used to have too much power over me. A past relationship." "Of course. Do you want to talk about it?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "But I kind of need to." So I listened. She told me about a man she dated in her late 20s. Someone charming, brilliant, the kind of person who lit up every room and made her feel invincible. Until he didn't. Until he chipped at her confidence piece by piece. Until she stopped recognizing herself. "He wasn't a monster," she said. "I'm not trying to paint him that way. But he made me feel small. And I stayed too long. And that's on me." "It's not on you," I said quietly. She turned to me, eyes tired, searching. "You say that like it's simple." "It is simple. You didn't deserve any of that." Her breath hitched. And for the first time since I met her, she didn't look composed. She looked breakable, like someone who'd spent years being strong and suddenly didn't have the strength left. She leaned back against the couch, rubbing her forehead. "I don't know why I'm telling you all this." "Because you trust me," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes lifted to mine, guarded but hopeful. "Maybe I do." We sat there in silence, the kind that feels louder than any conversation. Then she shifted, pulling her knees up slightly, turning her body toward me. Not consciously, not flirtatiously, more like she didn't want distance anymore. "I hate feeling weak," she said. "You're not weak. You don't know everything about me." "Then let me," I whispered. She inhaled sharply, a quiet, shaky breath. Her eyes softened, then hardened, then softened again like she was fighting herself. "You're too young for this," she said, but her voice didn't have its usual strength. "I'm here," I said. "Age doesn't change that." She laughed, but it broke halfway through. "You make things complicated." "I think things were complicated long before I showed up." She froze. Then, slowly, painfully slowly, she reached out and gently touched my hand. Not a grab, not a pull, just the lightest press of her fingers against mine. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Her touch was warm, hesitant, trembling. "We shouldn't," she whispered. "I know." But neither of us let go. The documentary kept playing in the background. Cars kept passing outside. Life kept moving. But in that moment, everything tilted. Just enough to never tilt back. I didn't see Leah for 3 days after the night she finally told me the truth about her ex. Not because we were avoiding each other, but because she had to travel for work. 3 days isn't much, but after everything we'd shared, the silence felt heavier than it should have. I kept replaying her voice over and over, the tremor in it, the way she tried to stay strong while admitting how deeply she had been hurt. I realized something important in that time. I wasn't intimidated by her past anymore. If anything, it made me want her more. She came back late on a Friday evening. I knew because she texted me. "Home. Exhausted. You up?" I replied immediately. "Want company?" No explanation, no overthinking. Just honesty. She sent one more message. "Yes." I was at her apartment 20 minutes later. When she opened the door, her hair was up, her makeup was gone, and she wore a loose dark green sweater that slid off one shoulder. She looked tired, really tired, but also relieved. "Hey," she said softly. I stepped forward and hugged her before she could say anything else. Her arms went around my neck, pulling me closer, like she didn't want to lose contact for a second. She smelled like airports and lavender shampoo. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded against my chest. "Better now?" Inside her apartment, everything felt different. Not physically. The furniture was still in the same place, her soft, warm lighting glowing from the corner lamp. But emotionally, there was a quietness, a heaviness, as if she'd been holding her breath for days and could finally let it out. "I missed you," she said. Not teasing, not joking, just truth. "I missed you too." I answered. She smiled tiredly and sank onto the sofa, tucking one leg under herself. We talked at first about her work trip, the delays, the meetings, the stress. But I could tell she wasn't telling me everything. Something was bothering her. Leah? I asked gently. She looked at me for a long second. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why are you still here? I blinked. Why wouldn't I be? She exhaled, frustrated with herself. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. You could date someone your age, someone who hasn't been through the crap I've been through, someone who isn't. She stopped, searching for the word. Complicated. The insecurity she tried so hard to hide finally surfaced. I moved closer. Leah, you're not complicated. You're hurt. There's a difference. She didn't respond at first, just stared at the coffee table like she was reading something written on it. Then she said quietly, I don't want to drag you into my mess. You're not dragging me, I said. I'm stepping in. Her eyes lifted to mine, slowly, like she was scared of what she'd see. And what if I fall for you? She whispered. Then fall, I said. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked vulnerable in a way I wasn't sure she ever allowed herself. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. What happened next wasn't like our earlier moments, those fast, electric, impulsive ones fueled by excitement and newness. This was slower, warmer, more intimate in a way that wasn't even physical. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her and felt the tension in her body gradually melt away. We stayed like that for a long time, just breathing, saying nothing. Eventually she spoke. I'm scared of wanting you this much, she admitted. I'm scared too, I said. But I'm here. She shifted, turning toward me. Her eyes were glossy, her lips parted slightly, like she wasn't sure whether she was about to kiss me or confess something else. Instead she said, I don't want to lose control with you. You won't, I said. And if you do, I'll be right here to catch you. Her breath hitched, quiet but sharp. Then she kissed me. Not passionately, not urgently, but intensely, like she had been holding back for weeks and finally let herself cross a line she'd drawn for too long. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, fingers curling into my hair. My hands settled on her waist, pulling her closer. She climbed onto my lap slowly, deliberately, her forehead resting against mine as she whispered, Don't rush. I'm not. Her thumb traced my jawline, her breathing unsteady. You make me feel safe, she said. You make me feel chosen, I answered. She closed her eyes again, this time not from fear, but from relief. I want you, she whispered. I'm right here. And the space between us disappeared. What followed wasn't wild or reckless. It was something deeper, something built on trust she didn't give easily. Every touch felt like a confession. Every breath felt like an answer. She wasn't trying to impress me, and I wasn't trying to prove anything. We were just us. Afterward, she lay against me, tracing slow circles on my chest with her fingertips. Don't leave tonight, she murmured. I wasn't planning to. She smiled, soft, genuine, unguarded. For the first time, the wall she'd built around her heart wasn't just cracked. It was open. The next morning, sunlight woke me before Leah did. Her head rested on my chest, her hair spilling across me like a soft curtain. For a moment, I just watched her breathe, steady and peaceful. It struck me how rare this was. Leah letting herself be this unguarded, this close, this mine, even if she'd never say it that way. She stirred a little, stretching before opening her eyes. Morning, she whispered, her voice low and rough with sleep. Hey, I murmured back. A faint smile tugged at her lips. You didn't leave. You asked me to stay. She exhaled like she hadn't expected me to take her words so literally. Most people don't listen that well, she said. I'm not most people. Her smile widened just a bit. We lay there for a while, not talking, just existing. But eventually reality crept back in. The kind that comes with phones buzzing and calendars filling themselves. She sat up slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I have to go into the office later, she said with an apologetic tone. No problem. And I might be late tonight. Still not a problem. But she wasn't really asking about my schedule. She was testing whether last night changed something, whether I'd become clingy or insecure. I'll see you whenever you're free, I said simply. That seemed to relieve her. Her shoulders relaxed, and she leaned down to kiss my jaw, soft, quick, but affectionate. You're good for me, she said. I didn't say it out loud, but she was good for me too, just in a very different way. We spent the morning making coffee, bumping into each other in her tiny kitchen, laughing at nothing and everything. It felt natural, comfortable, like something neither of us wanted to admit was starting to feel like more than just whatever we'd originally told ourselves this was. But then, around noon, something shifted. She got a call. Her whole demeanor changed in seconds. Her posture straightened, her smile vanished, and a shadow passed behind her eyes. She stepped into the hallway to answer it, her voice low and tense. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew that tone. Anger, frustration, fear. When she hung up and came back, she tried to act normal. "Everything okay?" I asked. She hesitated. "Yeah, work stuff." It was a lie, a gentle one, but still a lie. I didn't push. I knew she wasn't ready to trust me with whatever was happening inside her head. After she left for the office, I headed home. The rest of the day felt oddly quiet. I kept wondering why the mood had changed, why she suddenly seemed guarded. Around 7 p.m., she texted, "Running late. Don't wait up." Then at 10 p.m., "Still at work." Then nothing. For a woman who usually answered quickly, whether with a short reply or a teasing remark, the silence hit harder than I expected. I told myself not to overthink it. People had late nights all the time, especially in her job. But the uneasy feeling stuck with me. It was almost midnight when she finally called. I answered immediately. "Leah?" She didn't speak for a few seconds. I heard her breathing, uneven, shaky, nothing like the confident woman I knew. "Can you come get me?" she said quietly. "Where are you?" She gave me the address of a parking lot near her office. Not her usual spot, not somewhere she'd normally be. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, I said and grabbed my keys. I didn't ask questions. Not yet. When I arrived, she was sitting in her car, hands clenched around the steering wheel. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from trying not to. I opened the passenger door. "Leah," I said softly. Her composure crumbled the second she looked at me. "Can I come to your place?" she asked. Of course. She got into my car, pulling the seatbelt on with shaking hands. For the first few minutes of the drive, she said nothing. Finally, I asked, "Do you want to tell me what happened?" She swallowed hard. "My ex showed up at my office today." My jaw tightened. "He what?" She looked out the window. "He said he wants to fix things. That he made a mistake letting me go. That he's changed." I glanced at her, waiting. "But," I prompted. "He hasn't," she whispered. I could tell in 2 minutes he hasn't changed at all. I exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel a bit tighter. "Did he threaten you?" I asked carefully. "No," she said. "Not directly. He just reminded me why I left. Why I'm terrified of going back to anything that looks like that." Her voice cracked then. "And I hate that he still gets to me. I hate that I let him." "You didn't let him," I said. "He forced himself into your day. That's not on you." She inhaled shakily. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "You came to me," I said. "That means something." She closed her eyes, letting the truth settle inside her. Quietly, she said, "I think I need you tonight." Not physically, not the way she meant the night before. She needed safety. She needed me. And I was already hers more than I realized. When we reached my apartment, Leah didn't wait for me to open the door. She walked inside like she was escaping something, pacing once across the living room before stopping near the window. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest. Her breathing was shallow. She looked like a cornered animal, hurt, defensive, furious at herself for feeling anything at all. I didn't touch her yet. I waited. After a long silence, she said, without turning around, "I hate that part of my life." Her voice wasn't angry. It was exhausted. She finally faced me. "You ever have someone who made you feel small without even yelling? Someone who knew exactly which buttons to press to make you doubt your own sanity?" Her eyes glistened. That was him. Every compliment had a hook. Every "I love you" was followed by something that made me feel like I hadn't earned it. And I stayed for years because I thought if I just tried harder, he'd finally see me. She laughed bitterly. "He showed up today and acted like nothing happened. Like he didn't break pieces of me I'm still trying to put back together." I stepped closer, but slow, giving her space to retreat if she needed it. "You don't owe him anything," I said. "I know," she replied quickly. "But part of me still freezes when I see him. Like I'm 28 again and trying to survive a relationship I should have left sooner." She rubbed her temples, visibly frustrated. "And then there's you." I blinked. Me? She nodded, eyes searching mine. You make me feel calm. Seen. Safe. It scares me because I don't know if I'm supposed to trust those feelings or run from them. I took one more step toward her. Do you want to run? I asked softly. She shook her head immediately. No, that's the problem. I don't want to at all. I reached out then, slowly placing a hand on her arm. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into me. Just slightly, but enough. Come here, I murmured. She let me wrap my arms around her, her forehead pressing into my shoulder as she inhaled sharply, trying to steady herself. You're shaking, I whispered. I know. She exhaled shakily. It's adrenaline. Fear. Anger. Everything all at once. We'll deal with it together, I said. Her hands gripped my shirt like she was afraid I'd vanish. I guided her to the couch, and we sat side by side. She didn't let go of me. After a moment, she whispered, I don't want him to take up space in my life again, even in my thoughts. Especially not now. Not now, I asked. She looked up at me, eyes soft but intense. I like what we're becoming, she said. I like who I am with you. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I like who you are with me too, I said. And you don't have to pretend you're fine. Not with me. She nodded, wiping her eyes even though she wasn't crying. Can I stay here tonight? She asked. Not like last time. I just don't want to be alone. You're not alone, I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder again, her whole body relaxing little by little. After a few quiet minutes, she spoke again. Why are you so calm about this? She asked. About me? About everything? I'm not calm, I said. I'm just not leaving. That made her breath hitch, soft but noticeable. People leaving is kind of a pattern in my life, she murmured. I'm not people. She laughed once. It was small but real. You're too mature for your age, she said. I could say you're too vulnerable for someone who pretends not to be. She gave me a look, half annoyed, half grateful. You see too much. I see you, I said simply. She didn't respond, but her hand slid into mine, fingers intertwining like she needed the connection to anchor herself. As the night went on, the tension slowly drained from her body. We watched some mindless TV, though neither of us paid attention. She curled against my side, fitting there like it was natural. At one point she whispered, Thank you for coming to get me. You never have to thank me for that. She hesitated, then added, I know this isn't what you signed up for. I turned to face her fully. I didn't sign up for anything, I said. I chose you. There's a difference. Her breath trembled. And what if I'm too much? She whispered. You're not. And what if I break down again? Then I'll be there again. And if I fall for you? I exhaled slowly. Then let yourself fall. She stared at me for a long time, then lifted my hand and pressed it to her cheek. You're dangerous, she said softly. In what way? You make me want things I promised myself I'd stop wanting. Maybe you deserve them. Her eyes softened. Completely. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too, I said. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. But I still want this, she whispered. I do too. Her lips brushed mine. Barely, softly, like she was testing a truth she didn't want to run from anymore. And for the first time, she kissed me not with passion, not with desire, but with a slow, deep vulnerability that felt more intimate than anything else we'd shared. Leah fell asleep on my chest that night, slowly, like her body finally surrendered after fighting itself for hours. I didn't move for a long time. I didn't want to. There was something grounding in the way she held on to me even in sleep, her fingers loosely curled around my shirt like she needed the reminder that she wasn't alone. Around 3 a.m., she shifted and murmured something I couldn't understand. I brushed her hair gently, and she relaxed again. It hit me then, in the quiet darkness. I didn't just want her anymore. I cared about her in a way that felt dangerous because it was no longer something I could walk away from without tearing something out of myself. We woke around 8. She blinked awake slowly, clearly disoriented before remembering where she was. Her gaze landed on me, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability, fear she might have crossed some line by needing me the way she had. Morning, I said softly. She let out a small breath. Did I talk in my sleep? A little, I said. Nothing bad. She groaned, covering her face with her hands. I don't usually fall apart like that. You didn't fall apart. She lowered her hands and studied me carefully. Most guys would have run. Most guys aren't me. She gave me a small, tired smile. the kind that reached her eyes but with caution still hiding behind it. "Can I shower?" she asked. "Of course." She stood and walked to the bathroom with her clothes in hand, her steps slow but steadier than last night. While she showered, I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, nothing fancy. She came out wearing one of my shirts because hers was damp from being washed. The sight did something to me. Something soft, something tender. I didn't comment on it, but I noticed. "You cook too?" she teased lightly. "I try." She sat at the counter, quiet but calmer. Her shoulders weren't tense anymore. Her breathing was steady. We ate together, and she kept glancing at me like she was checking if I was still there, still present, still choosing her. "Last night," she began carefully, "I don't want it to define us or overwhelm us." "It won't," I said. She nodded, but I could tell she had more to say. "I don't want you to feel responsible for my emotional mess." "I don't," I said. "But if you ever need someone to show up for you, I will." Her eyes softened. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I care about you." Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something but didn't trust her voice. Instead, she whispered, "I'm not good at this." "Neither am I." That seemed to comfort her. Later that afternoon, she said she needed to go home for a bit, shower properly, change, breathe in her own space. But before leaving, she paused at the door. "Can I see you tomorrow?" she asked. "You don't have to ask." She smiled, small but real. "Tomorrow then." The next day, we met for coffee at a small place near her apartment. She arrived wearing a soft brown sweater and jeans, hair loose, makeup subtle. She looked more herself again, collected, composed, confident. "Hi," she said, almost shyly. "Hi." We sat at a window table. At first the conversation was light, work, random stories, normal things. But eventually she grew quieter, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "There's something I've been thinking about," she said. I waited. "I don't want to hide what's happening between us," she continued. "But I also don't want to rush into labels." "No pressure," I said. She glanced up, surprised I wasn't pushing. "I like being with you," she added softly. "And I like us. More than I expected. Maybe more than I should." "There's no should here," I said. "You say that like it's simple." "It is," I replied. She laughed under her breath. "You're going to be the death of my emotional defenses." "Good," I said. Her eyebrows lifted. "Oh, confident today?" "Maybe a little," I admitted. She held my gaze for a moment, something warm and dangerous simmering between us. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Do you want to come over tonight?" I froze for a second, not because the idea surprised me, but because of her tone. It wasn't playful or suggestive. It was intentional, meaningful. "Yes," I said. She smiled again, slow, knowing, like she'd been hoping for that answer. That evening, her apartment felt different from every other time I'd been there. Warmer, more personal. She'd lit a few candles, soft music playing in the background. She wasn't dressed to impress, just a fitted charcoal tank top and soft lounge pants. "I didn't know what mood I was going for," she said. "So I picked calm." "Perfect," I said. We sat on the couch, closer than friends, but not quite touching yet. She turned toward me, pulling one leg up under herself. "There's something I didn't tell you yesterday," she said suddenly. I braced myself. "What is it?" She inhaled slowly. "When my ex showed up, the first thing I thought was that I didn't want him to ruin what I have with you." My chest tightened. "And that scared me," she admitted. "Because it means this is becoming something real." I reached for her hand. "It already is." She squeezed my fingers, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm starting to trust you." "Good," I said. "You don't understand," she breathed. "That's huge for me." I brushed my thumb over her knuckles. "Then I'll take care of that trust." She leaned forward, her lips hovering near mine. "Promise?" she whispered. "I promise." Her mouth met mine slowly, gently, with a depth that felt like a doorway opening. She climbed into my lap, her hands cupping my jaw, her kisses soft but deliberate. Less fire, more gravity. Less lust, more truth. It wasn't passion leading us. It was connection. Raw, vulnerable, undeniable. And that was far more dangerous, far more powerful, far more real. By the time the autumn leaves started falling, everything between us had reached a strange, delicate equilibrium. I'd spent the past few months trying to balance the intoxicating pull of her presence with the reality of my own life, my job, friends, and ambitions. She, on the other hand, had her routines and responsibilities, yet somehow we still carved out moments that felt like stolen fragments of eternity. That Sunday morning, she called me with that familiar, teasing tone I could never resist. "Come over," she said, as if the mere act of saying it was enough to make me run. And I did, coffee in hand, heart racing, like it had always been since the beginning. When I arrived, the apartment smelled of fresh bread and citrus. She was at the counter, apron tied neatly around her waist, hair loosely pinned up, a few strands curling around her face. It was domestic, ordinary, yet the way she moved, the little hum she made while stirring, it was mesmerizing. She turned to me with that smile that had once made me forget how to breathe. "You're late," she said, mock scolding, but her eyes betrayed the affection behind the joke. I smiled, shrugging, and we fell into our usual rhythm. She poured me coffee, I leaned against the counter, and we talked about nothing and everything. Jobs, old movies, memories from her travels, the silly arguments we'd had in the past. We laughed, we teased, and then, as if by unspoken agreement, our laughter faded, leaving only that charged silence that always preceded a kiss. Our hands found each other naturally, fingers interlacing. She looked at me, not with the teasing playfulness that often marked our early encounters, but with something deeper, almost vulnerable. "I can't imagine life without this," she whispered. And I felt the truth in those words, a recognition that we were more entwined than either of us had admitted. Over the next few hours, we wandered through the city streets, coffee in hand, leaves crunching under our feet. It was the kind of day that seemed small on the surface but monumental in the way it stayed in your memory. Every glance, every brush of skin, felt amplified. I realized that passion isn't just about moments of heat. It's in the way you find joy in the mundane, the ordinary. Later, as the sun began to dip behind the buildings, we found ourselves sitting on a bench by the river. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. We didn't need to speak. The silence was enough. The city hummed around us, but in our little bubble, time seemed to slow. I thought about the journey we'd been on, the late-night confessions, the secret smiles, the arguments that tested our patience, the nights we spent wrapped in sheets, hearts racing, bodies tangled. It hadn't been perfect, but it had been real, raw, and utterly consuming. And that, I realized, is what made it beautiful. By evening, we returned to her apartment. She made dinner, I set the table, and we talked through the day's small adventures. There was an ease now, a comfort in the rhythm of our coexistence. The early intensity of our affair had softened into something warmer, something sustainable. Not mundane, but steady, a fire that no longer threatened to burn everything around it, but instead provided light and warmth. Later, as we settled on the couch with glasses of wine, she rested her hand on my knee. I could feel the familiar tension, the anticipation of what might come next, but it wasn't urgent. It was patient. We kissed slowly, savoring the moment, knowing that every encounter, every shared experience, had built to this calm certainty. "I don't want this to end," I said softly, the words heavier than I expected. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting both mischief and sincerity. "It doesn't have to," she replied. And in that simple statement, I felt an entire universe of possibilities open up. That night, when we finally fell asleep, it wasn't in the chaos of passion alone. It was in the comfort of knowing we had found something rare, a connection that defied age, expectation, and convention. A love built not only on desire but on understanding, mutual respect, and a willingness to face life together. I lay there, thinking about how far we'd come, the lessons learned, and the memories we'd created. Every moment, every late-night text, every stolen kiss, every argument and reconciliation had led to this quiet, steady closeness that felt like home. And I knew that whatever challenges awaited us, we'd face them together, stronger and more certain than ever. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that passion isn't just about the fire. It's about the warmth that remains when the flames settle. And with her, I had both.